could have figured this all out decades ago. I mean, these psychologists didn't need any complicated brain scans. They only had to measure the farmer's IQ, and IQ tests were invented more than 100 years ago. Actually, I realized I'd read about the psychology of poverty before. George Orwell, one of the greatest writers who ever lived, experienced poverty firsthand in the 1920s. The essence of poverty, he wrote back then, is that it annihilates the future. And he marveled at, quote, how people take it for granted they have the right to preach at you and pray over you as soon as your income falls below a certain level. Now those words are every bit as resonant today. The big question is, of course, what can be done? Modern economists have a few solutions up their sleeves. We could help the poor with their paperwork or send them a text message to remind them to pay their bills. Now, this type of solution is hugely popular with modern politicians. Mostly because, well, they cost next to nothing. These solutions are, I think, a symbol of this era, in which we so often treat the symptoms but ignore the underlying cause. So I wonder, why don't we just change the context in which the poor live? Or, going back to our computer analogy, why keep tinkering around with the software when we can easily solve the problem by installing some extra memory instead? Now, at that point, Professor Shafir responded with a blank look. And after a few seconds, he said, I get it. You mean you want to just hand out more money to the poor to eradicate poverty? Yeah, sure, that'd be great. But I'm afraid that brand of left-wing politics you've got in Amsterdam, it doesn't exist in the States. But is this really an old-fashioned leftist idea? I remembered reading about an old plan, something that has been proposed by some of history's leading thinkers. The philosopher Thomas More first hinted at it in his book Utopia, more than 500 years ago. And its proponents have spanned the spectrum from the left to the right, from the civil rights campaigner, Martin Luther King, to the economist, Milton Friedman. And it's an incredibly simple idea. Basic income guarantee. What it is? Well, that's easy. It's a monthly grant, enough to pay for your basic needs: food, shelter, education. It's completely unconditional, so no one's going to tell you what you have to do for it, and no one's going to tell you what you have to do with it. The basic income is not a favor, but a right. There's absolutely no stigma attached. So, as I learned about the true nature of poverty, I couldn't stop wondering, is this the idea we've all been waiting for? Could it really be that simple? And in the 3 years that followed, I read everything I could find about basic income. I researched the dozens of experiments that have been conducted all over the globe. And it didn't take long before I stumbled upon the story of a town that had done it, had actually eradicated poverty, but then nearly everyone forgot about it. This story starts in Dauphin, Canada. In 1974, everybody in this small town was guaranteed a basic income, ensuring that no one fell below the poverty line. And at the start of the experiment, an army of researchers descended on the town. For 4 years, all went well. But then, a new government was voted into power. And the new Canadian cabinet saw little point to the expensive experiment. So, when it became clear there was no money left to analyze the results, the researchers decided to pack their files away in some 2,000 boxes. 25 years went by. And then Evelyn Forget, a Canadian professor, found the records. And for 3 years, she subjected the data to all manner of statistical analyses. And no matter what she tried, the results were the same every time. The experiment had been a resounding success. Evelyn Forget discovered that the people in Dauphin had not only become richer, but also smarter and healthier. The school performance of kids improved substantially. The hospitalization rate decreased by as much as 8.5%. Domestic violence incidents were down, as were mental health complaints. And people didn't quit their jobs. The only ones who worked a little less were new mothers and students who stayed in school longer. Similar results have since been found in countless other experiments around the globe, from the US to India. So, Here's what I've learned.